There are no majestic mountains in Norfolk, no deep canyons or raging rivers, and yet it is still a spectacularly beautiful place. What this corner of East Anglia lacks in drama, it compensates with subtlety. Take for instance Holkham Beach. A favourite of dog walkers, horse riders and filmmakers, Holkham Beach possesses acres of hard-packed sand that tilt gently towards the North Sea. Dix Trips has travelled all over the world, and yet Holkham Beach remains one of our favourite places to visit. But today, we're going to turn our backs to the sea, cross the coastal road and explore a man-made wonder hidden just a mile away behind the long lines of sheltering pines, Holkham Hall. Holkham Hall was built in the 18th century and is the vision of one man, Sir Thomas Cook.
Sir Thomas Cook was the builder of the hall. Unfortunately, his parents died when he was a very young man. He was only aged 10 when they both died of the ague.
And so when he was 15, like many rich young men of his day, Thomas Cook was sent to Europe on the Grand Tour so he could learn about art, history, culture and architecture.
He goes away for 6 years, from 1712 to 1718.
But the young Cook didn't come back home with some cheap souvenirs. He came back with a bold plan and the beginnings of a great art collection. The plan was to build a great house in Holkham Park.
Palladian is a style of architecture that was brought back to England really from the English milords who had gone round on their grand tour. And the forefront, or the person at the forefront of that movement, was Lord Burlington and his protégé William Kent. Unfortunately, the builder of this house met both of those people in Europe and toured Italy for quite some time with Kent himself. That's probably why we have a Palladian-style mansion in Norfolk. It took 30 years to build in total. First thing that we see is the park starts to be worked on in around 1726. The obelisk, which is, I care to see it as an exclamation mark on the skyline, in around 1728. And when they started to build the house in 1734, they started to dig the footings. He wanted to occupy a part of it as soon as he possibly could, so that was the reason they built the residential wing, family wing first, which he eventually occupied in 1741. He then goes on to build this fantastic south facade, and we think the reason he did that was so that if he died before the work was complete, it was very difficult then after that point to change the style of the house. And so we see this great shot from the library all the way down to one end. The house itself measures just under 100 metres in length. So the house itself runs on this great north-south axis, so on one side, at the southern side, you have the obelisk, and on the north side, you now have a monument to one of the family members, Cook of Norfolk.
Holkham Hall is one of England's 10 great treasure houses, and the origins of Holkham's extraordinary art collection can be traced back to when Thomas Cook met Kent in Rome.
They formed quite a good friendship, and they tour around Italy together, and I think we can see Kent's influence on a lot of the art purchases that Thomas goes on to make. Some of the really great key works of art were bought just towards the end of that Grand Tour period, when Thomas himself was probably only 18, 19 years old, and I think it's incredible that a young man of that age is able to pick out some really fantastic works of art and bring them back here to Norfolk. But of course, to have a great art collection, you also need to have some of the old masters. We have a great painting by Van Dyck, a great equestrian painting by him, a picture of the Holy Family by Rubens that came from a Jesuit church in Antwerp, and these are all pictures that Thomas himself sees as he's going around on his grand tour.
While in Italy, Sir Thomas Cook commissioned a painting of the afterlife and, with the hubris of the age, inserted himself into the narrative.
We're now looking at a picture painted by Sebastiano Conca for Thomas Cook, and this is the first picture that Thomas himself commissions. And we can see that he's chosen a very topical theme, the Elysian Fields, which is the Roman version of heaven. And you can see Thomas himself there, dressed in a grey cloak, playing the lyre on the left-hand edge of that picture, conducting what's going on in the rest of the painting. And you can see all these people enjoying themselves and cavorting around in the painting, enjoying life as they would hope to do after they've passed on to the other side.
Not satisfied with collecting paintings, Cook also accumulated a comprehensive collection of statues during his time in Europe.
In the statue gallery itself, I think we see for the first time in an English country house an indoor space given over to the admiration of statues. Cook is able to obtain several key pieces. The most important one is the one of Diana, which he purchased from a cardinal whilst he was on his tour. And so we see that statue of Diana now here in pride of place in the collection in the statue gallery.
If paintings and statues aren't your thing, there's still a lot to see inside Holkham, starting with the magnificent entrance of the Marble Hall.
The outside of the house can look quite austere because of the classical architecture. And then you walk into the Marble Hall and it is absolutely, still does stop me in my tracks when I open that door and look into that space that he created in the Marble Hall. It's got the biggest wow factor, I think, of any entrance hall in England. It is all very much about opulence, display and power and wealth.
The libraries of Holkham have a staggering 10,000 books and manuscripts on their shelves.
We've got two parts to it. One are the law books of Sir Edward Cook, who founded the family fortunes.
The second half of the library consists largely of volumes purchased by Cook on his grand tour.
Having a great library, again, was one of those great displays of power and wealth because books at that point were very expensive indeed.
Holkham Hall both exudes power and luxury, and as a result has attracted an impressive guest list over the years, many of whom have stayed in the Green State bedroom.
In the Green State bedroom itself, which is the most opulent bedroom in the house, built specifically to house your best guests, so to speak. So Princess Victoria stayed here at the age of 16. Also, Queen Mary stayed here. And the fifth Earl was equity to the King, King George, and so they had very strong links with the royal family down at Sandringham. So King George stayed here and King Edward. So quite a few members of the royal family stayed in that room. But of course it wasn't just for royalty, it was also for your highest status guest as well would have stayed in that part of the house.
You don't have to be a high status guest or a member of the royal family to visit Holkham Hall. The hall and its other attractions are open from Easter to the end of October, with other out-of-season events as listed. Access to the park and the beach is all year round. Holkham Hall is on the North Norfolk coast, 1 hour from Norwich and 3 hours from London. And when the house closes, we suggest you take a walk on that beach before you go home. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you on another Dix Trip soon.